testimonials pointed this out. I forget what the exact statute was, but we have it in statute where there's a threshold. Once they pass a 15% markup, it requires a site visit to the property. And this assessor, everything was going up right at that 15% mark so they didn't actually have to do the work to justify it with a site visit. The ones that they thought they could get up more, they would just go ahead and put up and see if the people complain. It's risk-free. If you're the Jackson County assessor, up until now, we just passed the ballot measure, making the Jackson County assessor an elected position. But up till this point, it was an unelected bureaucrat like everywhere else. And they know the state tax commission is going to stand by them because the state tax commission is putting down the hammer on the county assessors who are doing the right thing and not trying to take money from people. And the county and then even at that, if I'm an assessor, why shouldn't I take everyone's rates up as far as I think I can, let them appeal it, make sure the Board of Equalization turns it down, turn them down on the appeal, send it to the state tax commission, and then I'm going to collect 2 or 3 years worth of inflated, overpriced assessments and taxes because it takes the state tax commission 2 to 3 years to hear any of these actual appeals. And meanwhile, Mrs. Boozer is there paying the double mortgage for 2 years. I don't know what I would do. I don't know what any of it, several of us probably heard some of these stories out of Jackson County and realize you can't help but think, what would I do if I were in that situation? I couldn't let my mortgage couldn't double. I couldn't swallow that. AI should be more accurate unless you don't want it to be accurate. I can make AI spit back the results you want. If I want it to have a certain bias, I can tell it, do it with this. You can program it to go through with all the biases or without the biases that you want. And if you're a government entity, let's err on the side of charging people an extra 20% off of their tax bill. AI will spit that out for you, right? It's the same reason why people don't trust the ballot machines and the machine count ballots. It's because it becomes a lot easier to fake something when all you have to do is drop a line of code into something, right? One reason tax bills are going up is because we're handing hundreds of millions of dollars of tax abatement out to developers, right? In the case of the Chesterfield Mall TIF, $300 million is moved from Parkway and Rockwood school districts into the pockets of the city of Chesterfield or into the developers. They get to split that money. I think the auditor's report actually pointed out that it was about 160 to the city and 140 million to the developer. We're developing property, new construction, which, by the way, all new construction doesn't come into that 5% tax cap. That's all money that could go straight into the taxing district's pocket in excess of the 5% cap. So what happens is when you forego that, you put extra strain on the taxing jurisdiction to go look for it and find it from elsewhere. And who are they going to go look for? Well, right now, you're not going to look for it from commercial development because that's tanking. You're looking to residential development, to single-family homeowners to pick up that burden. In the case of Chesterfield Mall TIF, over the next 25 years, $353 million are going to be diverted from new property taxes. And they're going to look to pick that money up. They're not going to just, government's not going to, Rockwood School District and Parkway School District, they're not going to sit there for the next 25 years and say, we're going to lose all that tax revenue. No, they're going to start pushing for higher assessments. They're going to push for higher rates. They're going to take more bond indebtedness out, and they're going to put tax measures to the voters. And they're going to they're going to try to convince us to approve this and that. And they're going to raise our property taxes more than they already have been to make up those shortfalls. This is money they're defunding from our schools. And then the schools, rather than forego the revenue, they come back in the form of higher property tax rates and say, we're going to get it from the people who are already paying if we can't get it from the developers. They have to go to the voters and get it approved to get a new property tax rate. But they don't just do it just like that. Voters won't often approve it, although they'll do things. They put it on an April ballot where you have, the only people showing up to vote in April are the PTO parents, the people whose kids are actually in the school, who have the most vested interest to approve the higher taxes. In some places I've seen turnout in April the highest places will see 15% turnout. And a lot of the state sees 4 to 10% turnout. You got 4 to 10% of the people showing up making the most consequential taxing decisions that we have on us. But that's assuming they'll even be honest about it. A lot of times what school boards will do is they'll say it's a no tax increase bond. So what they're saying is, just vote so we can keep borrowing money at the same rate. It's just to keep funding. They make it sound like it's some funding game that you don't have to understand. Just the important thing to understand is you're not increasing your tax rate. Well, what they don't tell voters are two things. One, that bond may be due to expire, which means you would have gotten a significant tax drop on your bill if you had just let the bond expire rather than re-up it for another 10, 7, 15 years, whatever it is. The other thing they don't tell you is because they're capped at only getting a 5% growth in their revenue each year. If the assessments take them past the 5%, what they have to do then is drop the rate accordingly to balance it out to make sure they're not getting more than a 5% increase to their overall revenue. Well, when they say, "Hey, voters, would you mind just voting to freeze the rate exactly where it is?" And for some reason, voters say, "Oh yeah, let's vote to keep the rate exactly the same." And they spend tax dollars convincing voters all you're doing is freezing the rate. Well, technically that's true. You're freezing the rate, but you're freezing the rate at higher assessments than you had a year or 2 years ago, which means your overall tax bill goes up. So what they're not telling voters is, yes, the rate is staying the same, but they were statutorily or constitutionally obligated to drop your rate because they were going to take more money because of the higher assessment. So what happens is when your house assessment goes up 20%, they can't take 20% more dollars from you. The Constitution, Hancock says they can't. They have to drop the rate to make sure they're only taking 5% more dollars for you to balance out the higher assessment. But when your assessment goes up 20%, and you freeze your rate where it is and you vote for that bond approval, congratulations, you just bought yourself a 20% tax hike on your property tax bill. And that's why your property taxes are going up more than 5% every year. It's because of no tax rate increase bond proposals by school districts, which make up about 50 to 70% of your property tax obligation. People understand that there's a problem in Jackson County, but people don't understand why. None of the processes have changed from what was put into the Hancock back in 1980 when the voters approved Hancock, and it had been working pretty well for a while. But now here we are 45 years later, and the local taxing jurisdictions have found so many loopholes, created new ones through 45 years of litigation, and just kind of whittled away at it little by little to now we have almost no protection from Hancock. And I think so, and people are looking for answers. And I don't blame them. This is all really confusing stuff when you're talking about debt servicing and bond indebtedness and tax rate increases. It's all designed to be confusing so the voters don't know what's happening. It's designed to be confusing so the politicians don't understand why it's happening. But now they've pushed it too far, and all people know is my tax bill is up. I don't care why. All I know is I can't afford it anymore, and I'm getting squeezed too tight, and I know who's doing it. The most difficult job I think we have as serious property tax reformers and trying to treat people fairly again in the property tax system is explaining to them exactly why they're getting screwed, why they're getting scammed, how the system has started to be rigged against them to make sure and guarantee the assessments go up, how it serves government first and when it should serve people first. And we need to make that explanation. People know why, they know there's a problem, but that's the first step, right? Fixing the problem is the hardest part, particularly when the people who know where all the bodies are buried here are the local taxing jurisdictions because they created the convoluted scheme. And so we have to fight against the people who spend a long time creating that system to make sure taxpayers are treated right. But I think that's the biggest thing in Jackson County is the voters. The sleeping giant of the taxpayers has been awoken on the property tax front, and that's good. It's people understand that they're getting screwed. My mission right now, and I think the mission of the property tax committee really should be to explain to the voters, now that they know and they see it, explain to them how they're getting screwed. So now we can go back and actually make amends on it and fix some of these giant loopholes that local government has just driven through our tax code for the last 45 years. For a lot of these people, these are documented appeals. You could sunshine them. It's important to know Jackson County is not saying any of this is wrong. No one from government is saying that any of this is false. And that's one of the most disappointing things. What you're hearing from Jackson County is it's not that these people are wrong. It's that we don't care. We don't care. These people are going to figure out how to pay their tax bill one way or another. When we go back to our first property tax committee hearing in Jeff City, there was a Democrat on the committee who, in response to Dennis Ganal, the director of MoTax Relief Now, he was talking about how it's awful that we tax unrealized gains. We tax people's houses as unrealized gains when there's no money to pay that. And his claim was, no, when your house goes up in value, that is a realized gain. just your house goes up in value on paper, you made real value. And I think Dr. Ganal's next question was, how? I haven't made any money at that point. If I haven't sold my house, I've made no money. And it could go down. Dr. Ganal asked, how is it realized? I haven't made any money. If I haven't sold the house, no money has been made. There's no money to pay the tax. And this Democrat's response was, yes, you've made money. You could go take out a second mortgage on your house against the added equity you have from your value going up. That's real money. You can tap into your equity. You can take a HELOC. You can take a home equity line of credit. You can borrow against it. You can do a second mortgage. We're at the point where the government is willing, and the government apologists are willing to say, if you can afford to take on more debt, you can afford your tax bill. To be honest, this is what property taxes are. When your house goes up in value, not only are we taxing an unrealized gain, and I don't think I've ever heard anyone talk about this before, but it's so simply true. One of the most like unethical things about taxing people's homes is that you're not taxing their equity. When my home goes up in value, the government doesn't ask me what my mortgage is. They don't ask me how much I own. They don't ask me how much equity I actually have. They want to know the total value of the house. You might have $30,000 or $40,000 worth of equity in a $1 million house. Government is making you pay that tax bill on the whole $1 million. Property taxes are is the government leveraging our debt to squeeze more money out of us. It's wrong that we do that to people. We don't tax any other asset like that. If you bought a share of Coca-Cola, or say, let's see, I think the median home price in 1962 was around $17,000. If you bought $17,000 worth of Coca-Cola stock in 1962 and just sat on it, rode the ups and downs, just sat on it, never sold it, you would have over $21 million today. Well, you would have an asset that was worth $21 million on paper. And you would have paid zero in taxes that whole time because it's an unrealized gain. You've never sold it. You've never made any money. Government says, we're not going to take that from you. But when it comes to someone's home, if you had taken the same $17,000 and bought an average American home in 1962, you would have paid over $63,000 of taxes alone on that property. On something you bought for $17,000, you today would have paid over $60,000 in taxes for an average American home. Why? Why are we taxing middle-class, everyday Missourians on unrealized gains? For most Missourians, their house is their most valuable asset. We should be taxing it the same way we tax all other investment, not punishing people whose biggest asset is the house they live in. Ganal pointed out one of the biggest problems we have with the current system when he said, well, I'm not looking at it from how much I can get from the taxpayers. I'm looking at it from what the taxpayer can afford. And we need to shift our entire mindset on property taxes, especially that way. Because if you look at when we talked about the 5% caps, how Hancock says government revenue can't grow at more than 5% each year. And that's the total. Really think about what we've said in that. What we've said is the person who, the entity we're interested in protecting is government. We're going to safeguard their 5% revenue growth. Oh, poor government. Let's make sure their revenue can grow at 5% every year. Yeah, or grows at a certain amount every year. Why are we so worried about why are we so worried about protecting government revenue? We should be worried about protecting taxpayers in the system. Rather than saying, do whatever you want to any individual taxpayer, just make sure you're not making more than 5% revenue every year. Instead, we should be saying, no, we should just cap the home growth at a certain amount. I think 5% is too high, quite frankly, but I would bite your hand off for 5% right now after seeing what's been done in Jackson County.